What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. So I posted a video a little bit ago talking a little bit about the Seattle Seahawks seeking a new quarterback coach. Well, by the time that video actually went up, the Seattle Seahawks had already actually made a hire. So I think most of you guys are aware that a lot of the time the videos that I post are recorded ahead of time and then scheduled to upload at a later date. And sometimes things get uploaded after the information is already out of date. So, yeah, I recorded that video last night, scheduled it to post last night, and by the time it got posted, it had already been resolved. Happens every now and then. Not a particularly big deal, but yes, the Seattle Seahawks now have a new quarterback coach to replace Charles London, and it is Andrew Janocko, formerly of the New Orleans Saints. That's where him and Clint Kubiak most recently worked together. We got this tweet from Jeremy Fowler breaking it down. So let's talk a little bit about Janocko. They've worked together not just in New Orleans, him and Kubiak, but also in Minnesota. I'm just going to go to the Wikipedia page and briefly go over his experience so far. It's not a lot, honestly. He's only 36 years old. He is basically the same age as I am. He has been working in the NFL for a decent amount of time. He's got like about a decade of experience in the NFL, so it's not bad or anything like that, but he is definitely young. So let's just quickly take a look at his career history. Currently quarterback coach for the Seahawks. Like I said, he has the job now. He was the quarterback coach for the Saints last year. So not much you can say about that experience. You're working with some pretty lackluster quarterbacks because you didn't even have Derek Carr the whole year. Had to work with rookie Spencer Rattler. Had to work with a little bit of Jake Haener. So it's tough. He spent 2 years in Chicago with the Bears as their quarterback coach. So not exactly anything you feel great about, I guess, because that was the Justin Fields era for the most part, and Fields didn't really develop. He looked better in Pittsburgh for the little bit of time that he did get to play earlier in 2024. Before then, however, we can see that he was with the Minnesota Vikings for basically his whole NFL career before going to the Bears and then the Saints. Spent from 2015 to 2021 in assorted roles. And remember, Kubiak was with the Vikings from 2019 to 2021. So there's also a 3-year overlap with Kubiak there. So these two definitely are pretty familiar with each other, and it makes a lot of sense why Kubiak would want to have this guy on his staff coming to Seattle. Quarterback coach in 2021, Kirk Cousins. I mean, he was certainly good that year, right? That was the year where Kubiak was the play caller and coordinator. Wide receiver coach in 2020, that would be Adam Thielen and I believe rookie Justin Jefferson. And hey, Justin Jefferson has had as good a start to his career as any receiver in NFL history. Assistant offensive line coach in 2019, co-offensive line coach in 2018. So one thing that I guess stands out here is that there's a decent breadth of experience with this guy, right? He's not just been a quarterback coach. He's been a receiver coach. He's been an offensive line coach. So you don't see that every day. Sometimes these guys stay in their lane. This guy hasn't. Assistant offensive line coach in 2017. That was the year the Vikings went to the NFC title game. Offensive quality control coach in 2015 and 2016. So definitely brought in under Mike Zimmer. And he seems to have done well. I mean, I don't think the Vikings would have kept him around this long if not for the fact that they thought he was good. They didn't let him go until Mike Zimmer was fired at the end of 2021. So makes sense, right? Other than that, spent a little bit of time in college in 2011, 2014, 2 years as the offensive quality control coach in Tampa Bay with the Buccaneers. So not a ton of experience, but the important point here, I think, is that there's a level of comfort between him and Kubiak. That's the main takeaway that I would have right now. It's there's nothing here that looks over the top amazing necessarily, but you want that level of familiarity. So that's the new quarterback coach. By the way, Seattle also announced that Frisman Jackson will be retained as the wide receiver coach. No real issue with that, I guess. I would say that DK Metcalf had his best years before Frisman Jackson, but that might not be an indictment on Frisman Jackson. That might be more about Ryan Grubb than anything else, right? It could also be an indictment on the receivers themselves. It could be an indictment on DK Metcalf not developing the way people thought he would. We don't get to know these things sometimes. So, for whatever it's worth, he's sticking around. But one guy who's not sticking around, and this is the other update we got earlier today, is Scott Huff. Scott Huff is out. He is not going to be the Seahawks offensive line coach. We are swapping to John Benton. John Benton, also from New Orleans, also worked under Kubiak in 2024 with the Saints. Makes sense. So, John Benton is your new offensive line coach. He's a guy with a lot of experience. He's an older guy. He has been around a while. 19 years of NFL coaching experience, according to Greg Bell here. So, let's jump over to the Wikipedia page. Let's take a look here. You can see that a lot of his experience is in college, but he's been in the NFL since 2003. So he hasn't coached every year. He did take 1 year off in 2023, so relatively recently, but this guy's been a consistent presence in the NFL for 2 decades plus now. Like I said, offensive line coach with the Saints under Kubiak last year, so that's where the commonality of their resumes comes in here. And the Saints offensive line last year was not very good. I will say it had a lot of injuries, though. Guys like Eric McCoy and Cesar Ruiz missed time, I believe. So not gonna get great results under those circumstances. Before that, he was an offensive line coach and run game coordinator for the Jets in 2021, 2022. So that would be, the Zach Wilson Jets. That would be the Mekhi Becton Jets. Not really much to speak of there that you would be too encouraged by, but it is the Jets. Sometimes you can't overcome inertia, right? And the Jets have a very negative inertia. Offensive line coach for the 49ers for 4 years, 2017 to 2020. So that would be some pretty bad years for San Fran, but also it would be their Super Bowl run in 2019. Obviously, during this time, they've had Trent Williams. Not really a lot of other high-profile players, but definitely a good amount of success. Assistant offensive line coach in Jacksonville for 2016. Offensive line coach for the Dolphins, 2014-2015. God, was that? That might have been actually one of the years when the Dolphins made the playoffs with Tannehill. I'm not 100% sure on the timeline there, but before then, he was a long-time Houston Texan offensive line coach. And I don't know how many people remember back this far, but the early Houston Texans were notorious for having one of the worst offensive lines in football. From like 2002 to 2005. 2005 in particular, Houston was supposed to start turning things around and becoming a legitimate playoff contender. And 2005, it didn't happen, and they were the worst team in the league because of the offensive line. So they got Benton in there, and over the course of an extended period of time, 2006 to 2013, he did manage to eventually turn them around and get them playing at a good level. So, not that that's too meaningful because it happened so long ago, but his work in Houston was, I'd say, quite good. If you want to attribute it to him, you can. And before then, he was an offensive line coach for the Rams during this was the Mike Martz era, when the Rams were a playoff team, when the Rams were a legitimate pseudo-contender. 2003, that was the year they lost to the Panthers in double overtime in the playoffs. 2004, they beat the Seahawks in the wild card round. I remember that. I was at that game. And then 2005, things started to fall off, and that's when he left. And then before then, you have a bunch of stuff in college, Colorado State, California University. So, not really going to speak too much on any of that. And a lot of this stuff is old, let's be real here. He was a much younger, different person when he was the offensive line coach for the Rams, for even the Texans. So, I'm not going to sit here and say that, oh, he was good there, so he's going to be good here. But this is a very experienced offensive line coach. This is a very well equipped to handle pretty much whatever you want to throw at him, offensive line coach. You would prefer that some of his better credits would have come more recently, I guess. But again, the focus here is about the level of comfort between him and Kubiak. So I think that's the main takeaway. And I mean, I'm good with it, right? These guys like him, right? These guys would not have followed Kubiak to Seattle if they did not like him. So, yeah, that's what's cooking right now. And now we know. Now we know. So, everybody, let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Maybe at some point I'll put together a little bit more of an exhaustive look at the careers of these two. But for the moment, I'll go ahead and let it suffice like that. They both seem fine. I wouldn't go so far as to say that they're great or anything like that, because they're not attached to anything that I would consider to be over the top excellent, but they seem good. And I'm on board. All right. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Another video coming soon.